With the sheer volume of games coming out, how do some of them stay fresh and free to play them more than once? Gambling. That's how. Or chance. Random chance in games. Critical chance is great. I love it. It's pretty ingenious, sort of, where almost any combat system benefits from having a critical chance and system to it. It adds some dynamic elements to your game where you have an expected amount of damage and you can do some extra if you're lucky. It also branches into a playstyle in a lot of different games. So strategy games like Fire Emblem have some reliance on critical chance with their physical units, and maybe some with magic. Action and first-person games will have force points that will give you a critical damage for free. So like hitting headshots, weak points, that kind of thing. But in other games that are a little more RPG styled, you can factor crit chance into the regular combat and the gear, which makes it more engaging than the standard combat system that you had to begin with. Conversely, it also works with your enemies. If your enemies can crit you, it's also a risk rather than just you potentially being stronger than normal. So then it's something to play around. Fire Emblem again usually has this issue where if you're really unlucky, you just get blasted instantly, you just lose a unit. Or you have to take into account that there is some level of crit chance and whether or not you can survive it. A lot of people who play Pokemon build their teams around that and do all this crazy stuff that I always listen to, but I don't actually, take in. So just from that example alone, you can see how crit chance can really elevate your game. Another thing that chance can be used for, from the developer side of things, is procedural generation. These is usually for your rogue style games, but it helps take the load off of making really intricate levels. Of course, there's still a lot of backbone to implementing the system, where you have a rule set that prevents maps from one looking the same, two having a bunch of dead ends, or any dead ends to begin with, and making them unique enough. So procedural generation is making a set of elements. This goes to the broader system of the rooms in an area, but also the things that populate it. So the different configuration of enemies that could be in that room, the different challenges that might come up in that room, or even down to like the set dressing in that room. So things feel familiar but fresh because they're constantly recycled and reconfigured into a new area. Much like critical chance, random loadouts also add a lot of variance to your gameplay. Random loadouts in what weapons might drop, what weapons you might start with, and the kind of perks that you might end up getting. It's somewhat of a bottleneck to your game's strongest strategies. So, of course, there's going to be some kind of meta in your game, especially like a combat game. But with random chance, your players can only get so many of those really powerful and synergistic components at the same time with how chance works, where the more and more you want a specific thing to happen, the lower the chances are going to get. I'm going to discuss later the balance with controlling chance, but with random loadouts, you also have the frustration that you might just get the most terrible, desynergistic things possible, and you just lose because of an unfortunate seed, which is an issue. But with strong compulsion and really the nature of chance, you tend to have people coming back anyways, and it becomes a little more comedic when it comes to how terrible someone's loadout can be. Something that feels obvious is random rewards. So having a pool of different things associated to a certain task, mission, or enemy gets people to re-experience certain parts of your game, or it funnels them towards the correct direction in some kind of large progression system, right? It's quite good to get people returning because people want that reward over and over and over, or just want the reward in general. But it doesn't really even out the playtime, if that makes sense, where someone can just have terrible luck and spend hours and hours and hours trying to get something, while someone else can get it within the first couple tries. Also, one of my favorite rewards in Warframe are those like Riven mods, where it's just like you either get a mod for a gun that not a single soul thinks of using, and it just has the most awful numbers imaginable, or you just get some insane Riven that's for some like ultra niche gun, but it has like some premium stats, something really disgusting, like 180% crit chance, which I forgot to mention, but crit chance is like really deep. You can go into like plus 100 crit chance in Warframe, and so like an over crit mechanic is not something you always see, which is just like reroll, can I crit 2 in a row? It's like flipping a bunch of coins basically, and getting stuff like that makes me either feel miserable for all the work that I did, or it's like I'm flipping Pokemon cards or something, you know? And so therein lies a small issue with chance, where you can't control how engaged someone is with your game sometimes, because it's intrusive when the chance isn't exactly in your favor. Then leading back to what I'm going to discuss with controlling chance. As you'll start to notice, there's actually a few cracks in having chance-based systems in a game. It's engaging, yes, because you kind of want some different outcome every time you play. So in order to prevent it from being like the worst timeline known to man, or just terrible luck, it's important to have some kind of system to control it. For example, a lot of roguelite, rogue style games will implement a kind of reroll system so that you can control your rewards, potentially getting something different. You also get, in some instances, like a card game where you can adjust your deck to have more favorable hands by having less cards you don't want to see. Still works in rogue context, still works in a regular card game system, which is pretty much mostly chance with trading card games, competitive style ones. And so you can consider attaching some kind of cost to this reroll, some kind of risk, because you inherently have a chance for something better, but you also have a chance for something even worse. So having them far and few between is compelling, but having quite a few can also be nice to have. Another interesting way of dealing with this is actually having weighted chance, and weighted chance in the sense that depending on what the player already has, you can adjust the rates in that instance. So if the player has, for example, a certain element, then you can skew the odds a little bit in code to give them higher chances for synergistic equipment. or perks, right? You can also slowly increase the odds of getting a certain reward if you aren't being given it often enough. In some instances, you might have another resource that the player is accumulating, wherein they can buy the item that they want if they weren't able to roll it in the level or what kind of reward system that's present. Warframe does this. I think a lot more games should do it because it spares a lot of people the headache, and you can get sick of doing the same thing over and over and over again. So striking a balance between these two is compelling. You can have an interesting back and forth with the game's chance and have a unique experience in almost every playthrough. But at the same time, you can also just be equally frustrated. Sometimes it's nice to have complete control. It's something that's really unique to games, where you can express a level of agency that feels really good. But at the same time, if it's all entirely random, it feels more like an experience less than a game, if that makes sense. It's a very strange feeling if everything is entirely unknown and you're not really being tested. It's more just like you're flipping coins, right? Generally speaking, you're spinning digital slots instead of real ones. The only real consideration is if the habit leaves the game. Play in moderation, right? You know, I say that like I didn't make like 5 cents or something selling a ribbon however long ago from recording this script is. Yeah.